In this video, I have just finished building the Redcat RDS drift car from the kit, and this video is all going to be me showing you the tips and tricks that I had along the way that maybe varies a little bit from the instruction manual or clarifies what's in there. If you're new to the channel, my name is Troy, and this is Roadside RC. You'll tend to find me bashing and crawling and drifting and racing, plus doing product review videos and how-tos. The first thing you notice when you open it, of course, is instructions. And in one of the very first pages, it's going to give you a list of all the tools that you need. I've taken their list and I've modified it just a little bit. These are the tools that I ended up using. So I did have Loctite itself for just a couple places. You need a knife. I ended up using this electric screwdriver a lot, along with its 2mm, 1.5, and 1.3mm tips. Locking pliers ended up being useful to help when we're screwing in and out and creating all the links, and all ended up being helpful for helping to align a few things. Of course, scissors to open up all the bags. We had the Redcat turnbuckle tool that was very useful also for helping to adjust the length on those turnbuckles. Shock pliers, but you need a pair of shock pliers as it turns out. Don't go gripping your shock rods with a standard pair of pliers. They offer these are the Dynamite ones. Many other companies offer proper shock pliers for very cheap. Just get some. 5.5mm, 7mm, and yes, I did end up using, of course, the standard T-wrench that is almost always used, plus some side cutters in order to help get the parts out. The last thing that I think is very important is a set of actual electronic calipers. They don't say that you need that in the box, and you could probably get away with a nice precision scale like this that goes to a 0.5mm increments, but honestly, you can get these for like $10 to $20. They are worth their weight in gold when you're building something more precision like a rear-wheel drive drift car. And then the other thing is, if you look on the Redcat RDS Facebook group, or if you look on Redcat's website for the RDS, you will find an alternate new base setup sheet. All right, so this is from Shane, the engineer himself, who actually designed this car. This is an alternate compared to the instructions that you have in the base core instructions. I believe this will be a better spot. So I'm actually going to build the kit with these dimensions, not the dimensions that are in the manual. Looking even just here at the first step, you will see that the bag number and plastic bag number, those are all called out. So as you go through, you will be able to find the parts that you need for every step rather easily. The instructions do appear to be nicely laid out as we go through, as I've looked through it already. A couple things I want to tell you with the differential, because rear differential of a drift car is very important. So if you can see it here, it may be kind of difficult, but on the diff itself, 1, 2, 3 tabs do stick up. There is one tab here that does not stick up. That is on purpose. You did not get a broken part. They have confirmed, Redcat has confirmed that that is intentional. I'm going to build this kit exactly as shown in the manual with the diff oil that it is using and that it is suggesting. However, the number of gears that you run in here, like if you take 2 of these gears out, that will make the diff work more open and more free. If you put a lighter oil in there, that'll make that look more open, more free opening diff. Based on my experience with the Ready to Run, like I said, I'm pretty happy with it, so I'm going to build it just as the instructions say. At some point in time, I'm going to be opening this back up, and I'm going to be playing with different tunes of that differential to see exactly, fine-tune it for where I want it to be to get the most performance. Unless I'm an idiot and I actually missed it, the kit does not clearly say that the 25 weight and the 20 weight, these two are your shock oils. We'll be using those later. It is the 5000 CST. That is our diff oil that we're using on this step. You should be able to feel the diff work nice and free now that it's all back together. You shouldn't feel any clunkiness. You shouldn't feel any burrs. You shouldn't feel any kind of anything that would limit the motion of that diff as it comes through. So you should be able to feel that nice and open there. On step 3, we're actually attaching the motor mount to the transmission itself. And one thing I will note is the instructions don't really tell you at this point that there are 3 different positions that you can mount this. So I am following the instructions as it is based on the body that I'm going to run. I have to run the motor in a lower mount, otherwise it's going to hit up here. So The instructions show you to assemble it in this downward position, but you can also assemble it up in the upper forward and an upper rearward position. So you can choose that, and it's smart to go ahead and do that now while you're assembling it, if you know how you want it for your. Now, if you're wondering, the genius behind this diff design here is that you can just take these 4 screws off on the back side, this rear cover comes off, and then you have access to the differential that's in there for tuning that differential. You do not have to split the whole case apart in order to tune the differential. That is a very nice, very key little trick, assembly technique that they did there for us. That probably cost Redcat a little bit extra because they had to add the extra screws and the extra parts compared to just literally molding this as 2 separate pieces. So kudos to Redcat for that. As I start this next bag, quick pro tip. Magnetic trays. You can pick them up at like a Harbor Freight or something like that for basically free. And you know what it does? Is it saves you from putting the bearing on the table and it rolling off, and then you being like me and spending 5 minutes looking for it on the floor. So just use your freaking magnetic trays. As we get to step 6, we're now working on the front knuckles. And one of the things that we've learned from the Ready to Run is that this part needs to be trimmed off in order to give you full steering angle. So part of this kit I highly recommend. You'll notice that one side here is actually connected into, right? This is all one piece into this upper ball end. You do not want to cut this side. The other side that's free, that'll be the bottom side. You want to cut this off, and you can cut it off all the way up here. And that's going to give us the steering angle that we really, really want. As you assemble step 7 with the rear control arms, and you actually start looking at the different toe blocks in here, it calls for the 0.7 front and rear. The alternate instructions actually are running 1.1s, but it is slightly confusing. And so what you want here is you want on the front, so this is going to end up being the front side toe block. You want this to be, the holes to be to the inside and down. And on the rear toe block, you want the holes to be to the outside and up. It's a little bit confusing. It's not 100% clear exactly from the instructions or from the setup sheet is exactly how it should go. So the rear side, up and out, the front side, down and in. We're jumping forward now to step 13, and the only real thing to call out here is all about these battery hold downs. If you look at the instructions, it actually just shows you putting them on the innermost screw holes. That is what I am going to do here for my build because I'm going to be using a shorty battery. It doesn't clearly say it here in the instructions. You can also put them out here at the outermost holes on both sides, and then that lets you run a long standard size battery. Step 17, we get into the shocks themselves. Very, very important part of the whole vehicle. One thing I'll note is as you look at the pistons that come in it, we really, really need to make sure that you deburr any little excess burrs that are still on it. You need this piston to slide as smoothly as possible in there. Also notice that they actually tapered the piston on one side, and it looks like from the instructions that the taper goes down on the shaft. Very, very important. Make sure that you pay attention to that as you assemble them. So it's this step of assembling the shocks in which I think per the instructions they want you to use a pair of pliers with like a cloth on it. Instead, please just do yourself a favor and get yourself the shock pliers. Another thing that you can do from a tuning aspect as you build shocks is it depends on how far you actually screw this rod end on. Actually determines how long the total shock can be. There's no guidance in the instructions as to how far they want you to screw it on. So I just screwed it until the threads disappeared in the rod end, but that may be something that we tune later on as extending it out that way. As you go to put oil in the shocks, there's a couple things I do want to note here. You do need a way to hold them upright for more than just a minute. So I got this workstation that includes some holes here for shocks a long time ago. It is very useful. Make sure that you are doing the 25 weight in the rear and the 20 in the front. Once these have sat for a while, then what you're going to want to look at as we get ready here is where do you want to set the shock preload. So for the rear, I'm actually going to set the shock preload down pretty far. I'm going to measure and make it the same on both cars. On the front, I'm actually going to make the shock preload pretty high. This comes back to where does the shock naturally want to go. Once you have that there, as you take the little diaphragm, you don't want to just set the diaphragm down on top because it'll make trap air. So what you're going to do is actually slide the diaphragm in. You may push out a little bit of oil, and that is okay, but then that gives it a nice seal. If you do this right, then when you pull on the shock, you'll actually see it rebound a little bit there. You notice that? So that's because of the pressure in there. That's why that is very important to get that good seal. One of the last steps is the bumper itself. It kind of shows you both options in the manual, whether you want to use more of what we're going to call the standard bumper style or the more splitter style. You have your choice here. You can use either one. I'm probably going to go with the splitter, see if it can actually match up to the body. If not, then I will revert back to this or something completely different altogether. I hope this video was useful for you. We have now stopped right here at the finished chassis. Next upcoming is going to be putting all the electronics in it and getting the body mounted. So be on the lookout for that video. I'll have a Redcat RDS playlist over here. Everything that I have done with the ready to run and this kit, that'll all be over there. So if this was useful for you, let me know. I really appreciate that. If you have any questions about what I did, leave them down in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. Thank you and goodbye.